Have you ever felt like you keep ending up in the same bad situation over and over again? Toxic jobs, difficult bosses, or environments that don't match what was promised? Hi, I'm Claire Wasserman, a career coach, host, and author of Ladies Get Paid. And in today's coaching session, I'm working with Michelle, a mom and grad student in Australia who's working towards becoming a psychologist. Here's the thing though, she is stuck in a pattern that she can't seem to break, cycling through jobs that start okay and then quickly turn toxic, and it's really shaking her confidence to the core. What unfolds in this coaching session is so much more than career strategy. We dig into why she pulled all of the books that she wrote off of Amazon after one negative comment, why she's retreated from putting herself out there, and how the same fear that makes her hide might actually be attracting the very situations she's trying to escape. This one gets into the deep stuff: how to build safety within yourself when the world feels unsafe, and how to use a difficult season as fuel for your bigger vision. If you've ever wondered how to break a cycle that keeps repeating in your life, this episode is for you. And if you want the key insights and action steps from this session, things like how to create a cooling off period before making reactive decisions, or ways to experiment with building internal safety, I want you to head to clairewasserman.substack.com. The link is also in the comments below, where I put together an accompanying post that breaks it all down so you can actually apply this stuff to your own life. All right. Let's get into it. Okay, Michelle, I'm going to have us kick off today's session by you reading what you wrote in your submission to be coached. And if there's any additional context you want me to know, go ahead and share.
So basically, I keep ending up in toxic jobs that last 3 to 6 months, and I end up with bosses who are nasty, they have unrealistic expectations, or the role isn't what's promised. So now I'm in another job, and it's mostly work from home, and there's a lot of downtime, which honestly, it feels really dreamy. But the boss, he is shocking, and the environment is unethical. When I apply for other jobs, interviewers question why I left so quickly. My confidence is really quite low. I ask questions from employers and they tell me basically what I want to hear. And then when I get these jobs, they pivot once they have me. I feel like I'm stuck in this sort of entry level position and I'm approaching 40. And that's really hard. It's a really hard thing to swallow, especially during the holidays where you're meeting friends and family and you're talking about what you're up to. I'm finishing my Masters of Professional Psychology and I have two subjects left, then a placement in 2026 and a year-long internship in 2027 for full registration as a psychologist. I have a 9-year-old son who I primarily care for. I live rurally, so I need flexibility for those school runs. My real vision is a private psychology practice with a home office doing assessments plus novel writing on the side. But right now I'm asking, do I stay in this flexible but toxic job or find something that aligns more with psychology? How do I explain my job history without looking like a hopper? And honestly, how do I trust myself to choose better when I keep getting it wrong?
Okay. It's quite a bit. I'm going to say a bunch of stuff. Okay. And then we'll dive in where you feel like it would be most beneficial for you. I see this as three issues. One is the next job. How do we get it? The story we tell, and how to make sure you don't make the same mistakes of picking a job with a toxic environment. Then we have the current position. How do we make it survivable? Can we reduce any of the toxicity? Is there anything we haven't yet done? And then the third option is the larger vision that you have, and you articulated it so clearly. What is preventing you from getting there? I know that there's credits you need to finish, graduation, etc. But I'm going to actually pose a question to you on where I think maybe we could focus. But again, happy to go wherever you want. Is there any way that we could use the downtime that you have now? Again, I understand that there's toxicity, so we will for sure discuss that. But the fact that there's a lot of open space at this current work from home situation, could we leverage that as an opportunity to build towards your greater vision Again, I know that there's things you're waiting on, like graduation, but hey, coaching doesn't require a degree, right? Could we start to build your business or at least put the infrastructure into place? Website, maybe a couple of customers, practicing our marketing, et cetera, all the things you're going to have to do in the future. Why don't we start building it now? So tell me, out of everything I've just shared, dealing with the current job, leveraging it for the future, finding a new job and telling the story, not making the same mistakes, what feels most true to you right now? That if we were to tackle it, you could have a little bit of breathing space.
I think I love this idea of using the downtime because right now, honestly, I feel like I'm floating in my spare time. I do the dishes and do a little bit of reading, study, writing, exercise, which is great. I think working on where I'm at today would be the most strategic move because I already have a lot of things lined up for the future. But just being able to help me with this time that I'm in, this transitional time, I think would really help with my mental health because I've had a lot of struggle around my mental health with where I'm at in my career.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, perspective is such an interesting thing because when I get into your shoes as best as possible, I take everything you've sent me, which for everybody watching, listening, Michelle wrote a much longer thing. I see it from your perspective. I see, oh, yeah, around holiday times when I'm being asked, what do you do? You're focusing on it's not the job that I want to have. I'm not done with my studies. I'm thinking about my age. I'm thinking about is it commensurate with the pay that I should have? Notice I've used the word should a few times. That's where your focus is. It's what maybe this ideal or idea of where you should be. Okay. But when I take it from a completely different lens as an outsider, I see everything that you're doing as building towards being an amazing psychologist. I mean, you tell me, what exactly would you want to do at the end of all of this? Would you want to refer to yourself as a psychologist or a thought leader in the psychology space, or how? Tell me, fast forward, like what identity are we building towards?
I think this is a great question, Claire. It really is. And to be honest, I want to be a very private person. The only social media I have is LinkedIn. I don't want to have social media. I'm not on social media. I don't want to be a thought leader. Yes, I want to write books. I want to write speculative fiction, novels,
Mhm.
but I want to be just someone doing my own thing privately, helping people living a lovely life. I do want to be a psychologist, and that's a title I do want to claim. I would love to claim the title of author, and I think that's the direction I want to head. But do I want recognition? Do I want the world to know me? Absolutely not.
Okay, good. Interesting. Very interesting. Tell me, when you think about yourself as a character in a book that you're writing, this is fiction. I never heard the expression speculative fiction, so you'll have to tell me exactly what that means. But you are this character, I think because you have an accent. I know it's Australian and not British, but you're reminding me a little bit of The Holiday for some reason. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So you sound cozy. And I'm imagining you in this like rural cottage writing your speculative fiction, also seeing some patients. You have this like lovely son, maybe a dog, right?
Mm.
And it's like this very meaningful, rich life, but because it's intimate and cozy and intentional, and you really created it yourself, and you did a lot of it on your own, and it was really hard, and you had like I'm thinking of this like now a fairy tale, right? This evil stepsister or evil
Mm.
stepmother, or you've had this like evil boss, this toxic boss, you've had the mental health struggles. And as the person reading this book or watching this movie, I'm thinking, and I can tell you what I'm thinking, but you tell me based on everything I just shared there, how do you feel about this main character and the journey she's on? What would you say either about her or to her?
Oh, that's a really tricky question. I think she is on a journey and realizing that just just as in with any book, I guess when the main character solves one problem, there's another problem. So yes, she has this idea in mind of having her own psychology practice, writing, serving. But when she gets to that point, there will be other problems. So I guess just being able to enjoy where you're at, where she's at, and make the most of this time.
Yes. And I would also add all of this has to happen for her life to have meaning. In order
Mm,
to serve others better, this is a personal opinion, by the way, I think in order to be of better service to others, we actually need to have a richer life experience ourselves, which usually means you've had deep suffering, also could
mm.
mean you've had deep joy. I know for me personally, I've made millions through brand sponsorships. I've also been on food stamps. And trust me, this didn't happen the minute I got on food stamps, but with some perspective, I thought, wow, I am such a better coach for it. I'm such a better writer for it. The fact that my life experience has widened or expanded or deepened in this way. And when you say mental health struggles and you are looking to serve others as a psychologist, I thought to myself, ooh, she's probably better. She's going to be better for it. Here's my question to you: writing and serving, these are the two anchors, or we'll use a different analogy, North Stars. Let's look towards those and not titles, level ship, right? Whether you're entry level, senior level, how much you're making. Put all those aside because that can be complicated and confusing. The fact of the matter is, what do you actually do? Okay. Do you write and do you serve? Are those things that you can say to me that you accomplish those pretty consistently throughout the week? Maybe, and by the way, maybe not at the level you want to do it or at the paycheck you want to do it or whatever, but like putting in the actual effort, writing of all different kinds, serving of all different kinds. Would you say much of your week is made up of those two anchors?
I think a small part is so I write every day. I have a goal every day to hit, it's only 300 words, but sometimes I go over. I do have a goal to write every day, and I do write every day. And then with my employer, I do serve, but there's not much work at the moment. So I do serve in that, but I guess it's not doing what I want to be doing and the way I want to be doing because there's those unethical things. Some of how they're making me do things I don't align with. So a little bit of each.
Yeah. I think until you are serving others more in the way that you want, maybe not at the ultimate level or scale, but you feel there is a consistency to how you're showing up in the world, that question of how do I talk about myself will become so much easier. How you feel about yourself, so much lighter. So I would say this is a good segue to talk about how can we start to serve others, because you're not going to feel like your life purpose is like you're not living it right now. And that, of course, is really frustrating and leaves you, I don't know if the word, I'll use the word anchor again, anchorless, like you're floating out here. How can we serve others that don't require the degree or waiting on anybody else, basically? What might that look like? And there are no wrong ideas here if you want to just throw out a couple.
Yeah, I don't know. I have thought about a few things, but then I just get stuck.
Okay.
Like I just come up against a wall. My last one of the places I previously worked at, they said, why don't you just do the thing that you're doing now, not for a company, just do it for yourself, just work for yourself because I could. But there's too much insurance involved, there's too much compliance. You need to be earning a lot of money to do it for yourself. So that was out. The idea of coaching, have previously had a business in the coaching sphere, and this is over a decade ago now, and I sold it and I made some good money from that. But I guess I don't want to get back into it. I feel like that's going back into the past.
Okay.
And then the other idea that I have had is yes, technically I could do group work, so run group workshops, but because I do also have a master's of applied positive psychology. So I am really interested in helping individuals to thrive as well, not just the other side of the coin. So I have thought about running workshops, but I don't have, I want to purchase a little she shed, like a little clinic, and set it up out the back of my cottage, out the back of the house,
Mhm.
make the garden all lovely and nice. And the she shed keeps growing in size because I'm like, okay, initially I was like, I'm going to see one-on-one people. Now I'm going to have group facilitation. So now I'm like, the size keeps growing and the price keeps growing.
Mhm.
So it just keeps getting out of reach.
Yes.
So, and also the idea, I don't know, the idea of group work sounds great, but I don't know. It just seems so foggy in my head, and there's so many barriers to that.
Mhm.
I
You
don't know.
are so perfect for me to figure this out together because I love it when anyone has like ideas that they have thought through and then there's blockers. Part of me wants to say to you, oh, it's just fear, but I don't think that's true necessarily. I think it might not be the right move for you, but you don't know because you don't have enough information. Hold on though. Let me jump to the transformation you want others to have. So let's work backwards, not from how you end up serving them, but why we're even serving them to begin with. What are your hopes and dreams for the people that you connect with?
This is really challenging because in my head, I try and think about the population that I want to serve, and I mostly always go to children and youth. And I think that's because I had a very traumatic
Hmm.
upbringing and a really difficult childhood experience. I think what I want to be able to provide is to help people, children and youth, navigate some of those tricky times, some of those difficult experiences that are cast upon them or that they have because of external circumstances, because of family, because of violence, because of whatever else. Yeah.
And how have you connected with that group of people so far? And like, how are you, whether you're meeting them, like, yeah, how are you, like, where can you find them?
Yeah, I guess this is tricky. So, in my last job, I worked predominantly with children, but I was doing two jobs. They ended up giving me two jobs. So, I was burning myself out. And there's a lot of children that do need support in this space. Now, in my current job and where I'm at today, obviously, I have a 9-year-old, but I don't really connect much in the community I used to. It's a small community, so I know everyone. So it's funny, it's tricky because I'm not exactly going to serve the people that I know, the mums that
Mhm.
have children at the same school as my son. Everyone knows everyone, and we've known each other since our children started school. So I'm not sure there.
Okay. What about people who are doing what you would like to do? Are you connected with those people? Whether they know you doesn't matter, but are you following them? I know you're not on social. So, like, yeah, like just what's the familiarity with those who have built careers that you admire?
Um, I did reach out like a month ago or two to a whole heap of psychologists in the area and or relatively in the area. And a lot of them asked to meet with me and have interviews and chat with them. And they said that when you're in your final year, come see them. And that was great because that opened my mind up. One of them talked about this program called the Cool Kids program. And it's a program that's run by one of the universities that I could learn. It's relatively cheap and it's helping children with anxiety. And so I got exposed to a few things. And I think in the future, there's a couple people I will reach out to and stay in touch with. I think my focus is definitely on children. It's on assessments, so diagnosing for autism, ADHD, and then the other part is definitely on the positive psychology side of things, which I want to probably focus on play therapy, but I haven't really met anyone in that particular space.
Because my recommendation is to get into, I'll call it a community, but it would probably be a series of communities of people doing things in the space that you want to be in, just so you can see what's possible, especially from a career standpoint. And I know you don't want to be on social, but look into Substack. Just find you're going to have to be. You have to go on these places. You don't necessarily need to participate, but just to see who's there, who is speaking up about it, who is sharing how they're seeing clients, helping clients, et cetera, et cetera, especially because you do have this downtime. So I really recommend start with Substack, I would probably say. Of course, there's tons of people in the therapy space on Instagram. If that's going to make you feel gross, I don't want to make you feel gross. But so I think Substack's probably going to be a kinder place, especially because you'll meet fellow writers. And again, you can just lurk. You don't have to participate yet, but just get familiar with the idea of how to serve people in creative ways. Number two is what do you feel like? And this is a hard question because you don't know what you don't know, but what if you did it now would give you more information about how to serve people better in the future? So I'm going to start by giving you an idea. When you mentioned play therapy, right? How to experiment with play therapy. I'm going to give you a totally random idea right now, just so you can see how creative I want to get with this. I know it's based on social media, but go with me for a second. If you acted out play therapy, pretending you had clients and you got two stuffed animals or a group of stuffed animals and you filmed it, you put yourself on camera and you had play therapy as a modality that you've learned, but you are customizing it in a way that you feel like would be even more beneficial for your clients. And you act it out and you do it in 60 seconds for this video. Again, if you don't want to post on social media, fine. But let's say you did post it on social media and you are here to serve actually other therapists. So right now your means is not connecting with children because I feel like that might be a little bit tricky, especially since you don't have the full degree yet and find whatever. That feels more complicated to me, but it is easier to connect with adults who want to be better parents, who want to be better therapists, okay? If you could teach them some of the tools that you have learned, what might that look like? So, whether you decide you ultimately don't want to be on Instagram, okay, maybe fine. If you're able to build a practice without it, God bless you. But maybe Substack because you're a writer. And it's where once a week you post experiments that you've run, or maybe the word experiments is not quite correct here, but I like to think of them as experiments of your own tweaks on theory and why you feel like doing it this way is beneficial for the child. But again, you're speaking to other adults here, right? And that will help you then build your community of people who can show you different paths to getting where you want to be. Tell me if I'm on the right track. How do you feel about this out of the box idea?
It sounds fun. I guess one thing comes up, Claire, is that a few years ago I used to sell nonfiction books on Amazon,
Okay.
and someone said a really nasty comment and it cut to the core, and I took all the books down. I stopped selling them. And so I have a fear of, I don't want, I've learned that putting myself out there is unsafe.
Oh.
Yeah.
You never recovered from it. You took down everything after one person's one comment. And I'm not saying that to diminish you. Trust me, I
Yeah.
know as a public person, I absolutely get it. Was it because what they said you agreed with? Talk about this as much as you feel comfortable. But
Yeah. They
what
said,
do you think if they said something else, it would have had the same response?
no, I don't know. I also, it hurts so much. And even talking about it now, like I can feel my nervous system is changing. It was about how my cover and book was similar to someone else's book. One of my books was similar to someone else's book, the cover, the image, everything. And even though all my books were original and they were written by me, and I got a graphic designer to design all the covers and everything, it made me think maybe I'm playing too small. They're comparing me to her and they're saying that I'm copying her. And that's really offensive because I'm not being seen here. I'm not, my work isn't seen and this isn't safe. And maybe this isn't the right place for me. And that's what I realized, that I'd spent the last 2 decades of my life writing nonfiction, and maybe I was playing too small. And so that's when I started to pivot into fiction and go, actually, this is more challenging and this feels safer than that space.
So this wasn't about the caliber of your writing, it was the goddamn cover they commented on.
Yeah, and it really, it still hurts to this day that people can say comments like that and
Wow.
not even realize the ramifications of them.
When you feel these feelings, what voices in your head typically?
That putting myself out there is unsafe.
Hmm.
And that also relates to my childhood. Speaking up is unsafe.
And then typically what happens after you have that thought? What's the next thought or feeling that you often experience?
I think I've just learned to go into hibernation, to prize privacy
Hmm.
because it's safe.
Hmm.
And I have a hard time taking on like when people say mean things. Like when I used to be on social media, I had a large following and people would say silly things to me, like about I don't know, one person commented because I had dirt in my fingernails in one of the photo and I had just been gardening and it was like and it was a really nasty comment about it and I can't cope with those kind of comments. I'm just too sensitive for that.
Something I would encourage you to do is build a practice of flooding yourself with compassion as the antidote to or the stopgap of this familiar cycle where you feel unsafe and then you start taking steps to protect yourself, but it's at the expense of your dreams. Like the only way that you're going to be able to fulfill who you are is by being fully who you are and by shutting down parts of yourself and retreating. You're frustrated, A, and B, as a mirror, you're going to reflect that in, as you've seen the bosses and jobs that you've chosen, right? They then treat you accordingly. They put you in a box or treat you really harshly, like the very things you're running from, they're doing, right? We've got to break this cycle. And I think for you, and usually for most people, and I also think about this for myself too because I had a therapy session this morning, so it's fresh on my mind. How do you break that cycle? And usually I find it's with deep compassion or something that can give you more capacity to sit with the pain but not let that make you retreat. So I even wrote down compassion, arrow, courage, and what compassion and courage feels like to you in your body is going to be very specific to you. And you can only uncover that through some kind of consistency. Like, so even trying it when you don't need it, I'm just going about my day. What would flooding myself with compassion feel like? What would compassionate toes feel like? What would be silly about it? What does courage feel like in my body? Because you're not going to jump from receiving whatever it is from others, the toxicity of the boss or of the comments, to making different choices than you've been making. Like it's not going to change in the external sense first. It has to come internally in your body where you start to create, again, like I said, capacity or a sense of safety regardless of what's happening outside you, which I'm sure you've worked on all of these things too, and probably repeating much of what you've already known. So I'll stop right there and tell me what, if anything, is resonating.
Yeah, I think this is a really hard one. Agree, compassion. I think I need to sit with this. Safety is something that I have been working on and continuously working on, more so in this period where I do have more time. But I guess safety has its own speed. So just being able to be okay with where I'm at is It's really tricky because,
It is so tricky. And by the way, something my therapist said to me this morning, there's no endpoint to this either. That's the thing
mm,
that's almost sort of frustrating is the way
yeah,
we're wired and conditioned. There's no undoing that. There's
yeah,
just a constant goddamn negotiation with it.
yeah,
And something I was trying to figure out this morning was like, how do I make the negotiation less exhausting? When I have all the different parts of me at war. Claire, you should rest. Claire, you should work. Or
mm,
you, it's I should make this move, put myself out there. Oh, wait, I did. And I got to retreat again. Oh, out there, you're like this poking your head out and then running back in and poking your head out and try. Oh my God, this is all so very tiring. What if we just assume it's always going to be like this? Okay. So then the question becomes, how do you do it with, if possible, any additional ease? Any additional ease. So, thinking of real scenarios here, and a real scenario, I'm a big fan of almost rewriting the past before we can project into the future. Let's try to
mm,
find those times in the past that are the perfect demonstration of your typical kind of cycle that happens. So, if you, again, I don't want to do it if it's too painful for you, but
mm,
the comment, ideally, I'll just say what I would love to happen is a comment happens, you feel devastated. You're going to feel what you're going to feel. And it might be, quote, irrational for the present day. But as somebody who does psychology, you know that, of course, it just triggered you back to the way things were in the past, right? That commenter represented something that was actually scary for you in the past. So
yeah.
your nervous system acts accordingly and you freak out. I would love, though, if the freak out didn't extend to you taking everything down, you saying, then it's all going away. And you know who is sabotaged? You. You're the one who ultimately suffers. The person who commented doesn't even notice, but you now did that. And maybe you ultimately would have decided to not pursue the nonfiction anyway. But I would love that decision to be made because, I'm bored. Like I'm just bored of this and I'm feeling a curiosity and a calling towards something else versus I'm making this choice out of hurt in some way. To, and you tell me if you feel comfortable going back there in that moment. What would when you feel upset about something, what could be a different way to feel upset? And I'm going to throw an example. When you see it, you're so upset, you maybe you journal or you're crying or walk through what you normally do. A way to do it differently would be screaming, like screaming. You have all this energy in you and you need to get it out. Or, the book Waking the Tiger by Peter A. Levine, he says, as animals who experience sort of trauma in the prey comes, they have to shake it off, right? Vigorously. They have to pant. They have to. So I'm not talking about a lovely walk, but something where you literally excise that person's shit comment. You have to get it out of your body. It passes through you. You feel terrible. You cry. It brings up a lot of stuff. Okay. And how do we get it out? That's one idea. But let's keep going down this rabbit hole. If you feel comfortable, what's a different way to break this cycle? Any thoughts coming up for you?
I think for me, it's about an intense workout, an intense run. Moving my body is always healing.
Okay. Moving my body. Okay. What else? Because again, I'm sure you did this when it all happened, but what can we do a little bit differently moving forward if and when it happens again? Which, by the way, of course it will, because it is already happening in your life anyway, in other ways. So, what are some other things that create safety for you?
Definitely talking to people, but it also perpetuates the problem a little bit. And just being outside in nature always helps.
Okay. Okay. What about inner child healing stuff? When you're self dialoguing, when you've clearly been triggered because something in the past is there to make you have that trigger, do you check in with that young part of you?
I think the thing here is writing helps me. I do journal every day, and then writing the fiction actually strangely helps a lot.
Not strange. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I wonder if a good exercise moving forward is when you're having these experiences of, I'll just call it safety or unsafe experiences, which again could be the boss, could be the comment, external circumstance. If instead of writing in your journal from your perspective, you wrote it as a fiction character somehow, I think you need some. I'll go back to the word perspective I used at the beginning of our session because, again, I can really feel it in your perspective. This is all really heavy and hard, and it is. But from an outside perspective, you're like, oh my gosh, she is in the process of healing and it's making her better for it. And by her better, she's a better parent and psychologist and writer. Like, this is all, it's all good, even if it doesn't feel like it. So maybe the perspective is the key. And a way to gain that is in your journal, write a fictional account of this person, the mean boss, or this person getting the mean comment. Quick question on when you decided to take down the everything. How soon after you got the comment did you make the decision to take everything down and stop writing nonfiction?
I think it was within 24 hours.
Ooh, okay. So we need a cool off period, right? So when I say what else, how do we create safety and how do we do it a little bit differently than what we've doing it before, how we've done it before? Maybe you have a little, like I'm remembering my wife, I get mean emails from people, not all the time, but I have 50,000 people on my newsletter list. I always get a comment, an email from someone and so mean, like, how dare you charge for salary negotiation, right? You're trying to help close the wage gap. You're charging for it. I'm like, how do I serve anybody if I don't get paid? I literally can't do this if I don't charge. But I get that stuff and it really bothers me. And I used to always want to write back. Okay.
Mm.
Immediately, by the way. My wife would say, cooling down period. You need 24 hours. First of all, she'd say, never write back. Okay. But that never sat right with me. I always feel like people should get a response. So it was, all right, you got to wait 24 hours. And then it was write out a really nasty response to them. Just don't send it. Like, you got to get it out of your body, right? So in this case, that's another great thing to put down. And by the way, all this is going to be on the Substack. So in our follow up, you will see written out suggestions for how you can create a sense of safety moving forward and ways to experiment with it. Because again, all of this is experimental. And so then notice, all right, if I wait 24 hours, I maybe write out a bunch of plans for what I'm going to do, right? And then notice, does your nervous system change? Start to get really in tune with the subtleties of the somatic experience because you're not going to necessarily feel fine, but
Mm.
there will be a shift. There'll be an opening. There'll be a release. There'll be a shoulder drop. You will not know that unless you are looking for it, though, unless you are paying attention. And the noise, the voices that are loud, the fear voices, which are always the loudest, will drown those signs out. So I would say another thing to add to the how do we create safety is maybe a checklist of what can I notice within my body. And maybe even beyond that, I'm going to use the word noticing again. In order to counter the noise in the head, maybe start to notice beautiful things. When you say you go for a walk in nature, great. But how much of that walk is spent stewing in your mind or feeling all the feelings versus, wow, that leaf is beautiful. Like it's turning colors. And I have an emotion that's coming up for me and my chest is opening or even if that lasts for 30 seconds, that builds the muscle of presence, which can then be the antidote to the sort of megaphone of fear that
Mm.
has been driving everything. So I'm going to pause right there. All this, I think, again, will be better when you read it in the Substack that I send. But what are your thoughts and feelings on what I've just shared there?
Yeah, I like that. I think having a cool off period is really good. Yeah, that really resonates with me.
Yeah. Let's talk though about how to protect yourself from this toxicity. Because again, everything I'm saying here is all, how to create the safety within your body, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, great. You should definitely do all that. And you also are in the reality of a situation right now you're not getting out of every day. I don't know if it's an everyday horror show here, but if you feel comfortable sharing any kind of specific examples of the way toxicity happens at your workplace, I can hopefully give you some strategies on what can you control and what do you need to surrender and accept?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think I need to surrender and accept most of it because a lot of it is not all of it's not in my control, but my reaction to it is the only thing that I have control over. One thing was that the boss said that there was some things in Teams and IT had to look into it, and then they must have read people's messages in IT and Microsoft Teams, and they didn't like them, and they shut Teams down, and they sent a very nasty email about how you don't talk like that, all this sort of stuff. So I don't have access to Teams anymore. And then one of the other things, like he was really rude in the way he said he did that, and I'm like, how can they just go into it anyway? And another thing is that I don't know when payday is. So my manager told me payday's every Monday, weekly. Another girl who just left, she told me payday is on Friday and it's not regular. Both said it's not regular. And then I've been at the company for 4 weeks now, and I had to follow up last week because it was 2.5 weeks and I hadn't got paid. And I followed up with the boss, and I didn't like that. I didn't want to speak up, but I'm like, where's my pay? And
Mhm.
I also asked, when is payday? How often is payday? And I didn't get a response. They paid me, but I didn't get a response. And I haven't got a pay slip. So I don't know about payday. I'm going to have to approach that again about when is it, how often is it, and can I have a pay slip? And then it's other things about just the way that they have me working with clients, and they mostly have me doing report writing, but I'm meant to also be working with clients and stakeholders as part of that. I'm not just meant to be writing the report for the person. I have to work with them, but they get me writing these reports and I've never even met the person. And it's like, you can't do that. And then lots of things go under the radar. So for instance, I said, can I have Monday off for this week because I had a medical appointment? They just forgot all about it. They didn't put it in my diary. So I literally went to my medical appointment and then I worked in the afternoon and they didn't even know. And I was
Mhm.
like, you know what? Stuff it. I'll just take that freebie because they don't read their emails, they don't respond.
See this just this is for you and for anybody watching, listening who is in a current situation that is not good and has another dream. See what is happening right now as it's an investment in the future. Meaning, if you're getting a paycheck, which we will discuss that in 1 second, if you're getting a paycheck, it's like that paycheck is funding your future dream. And then in your case, other things, this is all to me, I'll be a bit woo for a second. The universe is saying, hey, we want Michelle to experiment with courage. Safety and courage, because you had to stick your neck out. Like you were literally forced to speak up. You're like, this is too much. And I'm hearing it going, ooh, this is going to teach her so much. This is going to teach her so much. There's going to be a lot of opportunities in everything you've just shared here for experimenting with ways to speak up, some of which, many of which may not get the response you actually want. That's almost not the point. It's learning how to expand your capacity for the courage of speaking up. That's me setting the foundation of let's get not excited about the situation, but let's not dread it so much. Let's not resist it so much because there's a lot here that will teach you. Okay. So, on that note, assuming you've talked to other people about if a paycheck hasn't come and you were expecting it, that's not even a question. Like you should definitely be looking for other jobs. And when they say, why are you leaving? You could say, I they didn't pay me. Like I don't want to leave, but I asked for a pay. If they're not paying you, that's not a job. That's a volunteer opportunity.
I did get paid 2.5 weeks in,
Okay.
but I don't know when my next payday is. And it's obviously not weekly because I haven't been paid
Mhm.
this week. If I didn't get paid, I would definitely leave. But yes, it's a hard balance because the fact is that for the most part, I've like this last week, I think I did about 6 hours work and I was paid for 30 hours. And this week I've done probably 3 hours work. I'll probably end up doing about 12 hours work this week and I'm paid for 30 hours.
Okay.
It's hard because you go, pay is a little bit uncertain, but hey, I have time if I wanted. It's there to build my dreams.
That's what the universe is giving you the option for. How do you build? Yeah, it comes back to the original question of like, how do we build? So, wait, let me just pause though. For any toxicity you're receiving, I've said this before in other coaching sessions. If somebody is interacting with you in a way that is really awful, what I have found to be most helpful is one of two things or do both. One, see it like the show The Office. So either there's humor, this is ridiculous. Doesn't mean you have to like it. Maybe you can't even laugh at it, but they're a caricature. Okay. Or see it with humanity. So humor or humanity or both. And the humanity piece would be imagining them as a scared child, like the way that they're acting is clearly because of triggers in their own life, right? In how they were raised, or see them as somebody who, when falling asleep at night, is incredibly anxious about what they're doing. This is assuming that we believe most people are good. If you
Mhm.
think, nope, some people are just born bad and that's who my boss is, fine, but it's going to be a lot harder to work with them. If you can try to see them at their core essence, which is maybe a lost and scared person, and that's why they're acting out or doing unethical things because it's fear based. We don't have time to go too deep into this, but I have read some psychology, which you perhaps as well, some
Mhm.
psychology that says the things that we are most triggered by in other people is because we see ourselves in them. And you sound like an incredibly ethical person and somebody who really cares about it. So it's very interesting because this unethical stuff, why is that so bothersome to me? Does that mean there's a secret fear of me being unethical? Like, again, food for thought. I don't have the time or the degree to figure that out with you, but it is an interesting question to think about because I've seen this also in my own life with, for example, like my wife. She'll be triggered by a certain situation, a way a person acts, and it doesn't bother me at all, but it
Mm.
bothered her, or vice versa. And it's like, oh, because it's bringing up something from us. And wait, could it even be a mirror to the ugly parts of ourselves? Ugh, hardcore. But if you could just see them at, speaking of hardcore, at the core, it will help just create, again, capacity. I think that is really the through line for today's session, which we're going to wrap up in a few minutes, is how do we increase capacity to be with shitty situations or shitty identities, so to speak. And the other part of it is how do we gain perspective? And it's hard to do that for ourselves. So we need to get a little experimental with it. But I do think, just as a couple of next steps, you do have this free time right now. This is such the opportunity to build towards what it is that you want to do. And if you can't start working with customers and clients right now, then it is building the service component of it, though. Like you're not charging for it, you might not even be meeting with somebody, but it's getting your ideas out there. And to be wholly alone in this is might feel safe, but it's ultimately, I'll just share from my experience of having gone through some really basically the times in my life that I have felt any kind of transcendence, like deep awakenings, aha moments. I'm aligned in my body, like I'm fully present. It's only really happened like a handful of times in my life. And I went back and I said, what variables occurred that allowed me to feel deeply present? It was connection to others. There were other people, and sometimes it was a lot of people, and sometimes it was very intimate one-on-one type stuff. Even just with my son's medical trauma, the doctors and the nurses, like I don't believe I am traumatized from a traumatic experience because there were people there who I allowed them to love me, like I received their love. And I know that's maybe specific to my story, but I can't help but think that could be the key to all of this is how do we deeply connect with other people. And right now, everything you've shared with me, it's a very lonely, cozy existence, but it's working from home, writing as a writer to a writer, like that is some lonely, isolating shit. And it might actually feel good, but not always be good for us. So I would urge you to think about how can you broaden your connections with, again, whether it's the people you want to serve or their parents or other therapists in the space. Honestly, that to me feels like a great next step because you can't feel like you're navigating life alone. And the times that you do You get in front of those people. Now you feel like you have to pitch yourself or have this elevator pitch about what you do and you're unhappy about it. No, I want you to connect with those people through the language of service because that is where you are drawn to. So I would say a great next step is brainstorming how to connect with and also deepen those connections with just people who share your values. I mean, it sounds so much simpler than it actually is. On that note, is there anything left you want to share in our final minutes together?
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so honored that you shared this moment with me in this season of your life, and I understand it more than appreciate you, Michelle. Thank you so much for listening. If this episode hit home for you, if you recognized yourself in Michelle's story, in that pattern of retreating when things get hard or playing small to stay safe, I want you to know there's a way to actually work with this stuff and not just think about it. So head over to clairewasserman.substack.com, link in the comments below, where I've written up the key insights and action steps from today's session. And that post is completely free. Now, if you want to go deeper, I've created something called a progress plan. It's 7 days of daily micro exercises designed to help you actually integrate what you heard today. So, not just nod along and forget about it tomorrow. We're talking small, doable actions that build on each other so that by the end of the week, you've made real movement. Because here's what I know to be true: listening is great, but transformation happens in the doing. So, go to clairewasserman.substack.com, read the free post, and if you're ready to put this into practice, upgrade and become a paid subscriber to get your progress plan. I'll see you next time.